Really quick, if you need a recap of Season 2 of The Witcher, and I'm sure you do, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. It'll take you right to my Season 2 recap. Now, Season 3 picks up a few months after the ending of Season 2, and a lot of people are looking for Ciri. Francesca is one of those people. She's hell-bent on finding Ciri and being first. She's united with other elves, but they're getting sick of her, because they're trying to take their land back, while she's running these secret missions. For what purpose, they don't know. Only her closest advisors know why she's doing this. One particular elven soldier named Gallatin is fed up. For the last few months, the elves, in order to take their land back, have been attacking caravans, but it's been costly. He wants Francesca's help, but she's held back her best soldiers to run these secret missions, and he's sick of losing elves. This causes a pretty tense argument between the two. Vizimir is also looking for Ciri. He blames Dijkstra because Dijkstra promised that Ciri would be his, and so far, it hasn't been the case. He really just wants her to prove that he is the king, prove he has some wielding power. One of the excuses that Dijkstra makes is the fact that they keep getting attacked by elves, but Vizimir doesn't want to hear it. He wants results. He wants Ciri. In order to speed up the process, he's going to put his brother Radovid on the job. From a quick glance, though, Radovid just kind of looks like a playboy partier. Not exactly someone you take seriously. Philippa and Dijkstra get together to actually plan on how to get Ciri, because they know that they're actually the ones who are pulling the strings. Neither of them want to deal with Radovid, but Philippa agrees to keep an eye on him. She does, however, say that if she does this, she'll be the one calling the shots when she gets back. The final person who's really searching for her is Rience. He bought a monster off a couple of junkies, and this monster is able to search out elven blood. He feels like that'll be the quickest way to find Ciri. And why has Ciri been so hard to locate? It's because she's been traveling with Yennefer and Geralt, and they move constantly. Geralt is having Yennefer teach Ciri magic, but it's been an uphill battle. Ciri has promise, but she has no skills. And anytime they seem to find a home, something pops up and they have to move. Geralt can't keep doing this, so he calls on his old buddy Yarpen. He knows that Yarpen will use discretion, not tell anybody where they are, and hopefully they can lay low and just take this time where Yennefer can train Ciri. And Geralt's been really good about staying out of it. He's been keeping an eye on it, but he's letting Yennefer do her thing. Yennefer, however, is no Tissaia, and she knows this. Because she's having such a hard time teaching Ciri how to use her gifts, she's getting more and more frustrated. Ciri, however, has a pretty good attitude about it. She would, though, like to do something else. Hanging out with Yennefer and Geralt, it's cool, but, a girl needs to get out every once in a while. And Yarpen has the perfect opportunity for this. Yarpen tells everybody that they're having a festival down in the valley, and he invites all of them. And both Yennefer and Ciri want to go. As Ciri says, it's been months since anyone's been asking about me. She feels like it's safe, and everyone's kind of forgotten about her. And boy, is she wrong on that front. Geralt, however, wants to take a more cautious approach, but he's outvoted, and they decide to go to the festival, using disguises. Very poor disguises. During this crowded festival, Ciri runs off into a maze, while Geralt and Yennefer kind of hold back. In these past few months, the sexual tension between these two has been building, but it hasn't transpired in anything. And they're reminded about why they haven't messed around and how to keep the eye on the prize when they're attacked by Rience's monster. He shows up in this maze to attack Ciri, and Ciri tries to use her training from Yennefer, but she needs Yennefer's help, ultimately. It's Yennefer and Geralt who end up killing the beast. But because of this, they know that it's still not safe. They need to put an end to this because they just can't keep running. Because of the kind of monster, Geralt knows who sold Rience the monster just based on how rare it is and how dumb it would be to trap that sort of thing. He also knows that this particular fella would have people in the bars. So what he wants to do is he wants to have Yarpen kind of lay a trap. Go to the local pubs and just talk about how he has to transport this spoiled brat. Word will quickly get out, and these people will show up. Rience will be there. He'll think that he's going to attack Ciri, but he's walking into a trap. If all goes according to plan, they'll be able to get rid of Rience for good. In order to make this believable, though, they need to have Ciri ride without Yennefer and Geralt. They need to make this look legit. But they're not willing to let her ride alone. They want to have her ride with someone they can trust, and that person is Jaskier. They have Yarpen go and tell him, hey, your friends need help, and it can't come at a worse time. Because Jaskier just had a conversation with Philippa about the same thing. Philippa wants results. They're paying Jaskier a pretty handsome amount of money to locate Ciri, and so far he hasn't done it. So at the moment, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He doesn't want to help Philippa and Dijkstra. He wants to help Ciri. But he's kind of at the moment just kicking the can down the road. He does end up following Yarpen, and while they travel, they go through the plan. Jaskier isn't a big fan of this idea. It's pretty risky, but both Yennefer and Geralt let him know, we saved your life before, we can save it again. Don't worry, we're using Ciri as the bait, not you. The group heads to a place called Sherwood. It's a sacred elven area with a giant statue of an elven leader named Ellerin. The condensed version of the story is she went head-to-head against the humans and lost. In order to defend her land and stick up for what she believed in, she ultimately led her people to the slaughter. While they don't know it, it ironically sounds like what's going on with Francesca, who, just like Rience, has gotten word about this convoy carrying Ciri. And just like Rience, she has no idea it's a trap. She's going to need help, though, if she's going to take Ciri alive. She knows she needs to make good with Gallatin, so she tells him, I've thought about what you said and I've reconsidered. You're right. We need to work together. I'm going to give you my best soldiers to attack the next caravan. Never telling Gallatin about what's in that caravan. So now you've got Rience and you've got the elves heading to the same place to try to find the same girl, both not realizing it's all a trap. And that girl has had a lot of time to do some soul searching. She's human, but she's also elven. And she's sick of the infighting. She's sick of all of it. She would like to find a way forward that doesn't divide, but instead unites. After all, she is the only one who knows how both of the sides feel. Geralt thinks it's noble, but also thinks it's foolish. It'll never work. There's just been too much bad blood between the groups for too long. Ciri, however, is just way more positive thinking. She thinks that maybe this is why this trio was brought together. For Geralt to teach her how to fight, for Yennefer to teach her how to harness her powers, all in the name of the greater good. Geralt starts to tell her how he believes her in what she says, but then he hears that the people they're waiting for are coming, and it's time for him and Yennefer to take their places. About a minute later, that is when Rience and his people show up. And all that training that she did with Geralt, it worked. She's able to hold her own. Just in enough time for Geralt and Yennefer to pop out and attack. Yarpen and his people also join the fight on behalf of Ciri and her side. And realizing that he's been outnumbered, Rience tries to open up a portal and escape. But Yennefer is able to keep the portal open long enough to allow Geralt to jump through and hopefully kill Rience. Yennefer is struggling big time. She feels a darkness in this portal that's seeping into her. She's trying to hold it as long as possible, waiting for Geralt to pop on through. It's taking him a while, though, because Rience is holding him off with his fire magic. It's also worth mentioning that Geralt has no idea where they are. Geralt also doesn't know that Francesca and the other elves have shown up. And Gallatin is pissed off when they show up and there is no caravan, and he finds out that he's been duped by Francesca. But Francesca tells him the girl is all that matters. So you've got this battle going on between these groups. Ciri in the middle of it. Yennefer trying to keep this portal open, and Geralt trying to kill Rience, and it's kind of just a shit show. Francesca starts to scold Yennefer at one point about why she thinks that Ciri belongs to her, but Yennefer uses her magic to knock Francesca out. It's only a matter of time, though, before the portal closes, and Geralt is stuck in this building for good. He realizes this, so even though he has Rience dead to rights, he decides to take his power away from him by breaking both of his hands and jumping through the portal. The group then is easily able to fight everybody off, with Francesca and the elves retreating. Once they're able to get to safe ground, Yennefer tells Geralt, I have to take her to Aretuza. There's only so much I can do. She'll be best suited there. Geralt is hesitant to give the okay to do this. He's worried about Ciri in Aretuza. And Yennefer says, then come with us. Watch over her. If it's not safe, pull her out. A very reluctant Geralt agrees, but he's not coming with. He knows that he needs to find Rience and finish him off. He's just scared. He's scared for Ciri, and he also is still hesitant to trust Yennefer. Ultimately, though, he knows that he has to get past that. He has to give her a chance to show that she's trustworthy. So when they wake up the next morning, they're going to go their separate ways, with Yennefer and Ciri going to Aretuza to better harness her magical powers, and Geralt heading off to go finish off Rience. But Geralt probably should have headed with them, because Rience is in Aretuza. One of the reasons why Yennefer wanted to take Ciri there is because she knows that Rience isn't the master. He's not the one calling the shots or somebody above him, and that person is Stregobor. The place where Rience and Geralt were fighting was Aretuza, but because Geralt has never been there before, he didn't know. And deep in Aretuza, Stregobor, using his powers, has fixed Rience's hands, and he's back to being able to conjure fire magic. As for the other people who are looking for Ciri, that was the final straw for Gallatin. He's had enough. He got duped and hoodwinked, and he's going to go get help from an old friend to deal with Francesca. Before he does that, though, he stops off and helps one of his injured soldiers. It's Dara. And Dara admits that he does know Ciri, and he actually warned them that she was dangerous. So that kind of just adds to Gallatin's thought process that Francesca needs to go. But after the battle that took place, Jaskier can't do this anymore. He meets with Philippa and Radovid, and he agrees to their demands to get Ciri. Because, as he tells both of them, Ciri's in danger and the people around her are also in danger. It would just be best if she landed somewhere safe. Figure Redania is as good of a place as any. Jaskier agrees to basically hand her over, but he does so under one condition. They get rid of Rience. As soon as Rience is gone, he'll hold up his end of the bargain. He adds in that by doing this, it'll also help because you'll gain Ciri's trust. In episode 2, Yennefer and Ciri are on their way to Aretuza, but it's just going to take some time to get there. There's also the whole matter of, well, Yennefer's not really welcome there anymore. So to warn Tissaia that she's on her way, she sends her a letter, knowing that it's going to take some time for that letter to get to Tissaia, but also it'll at least give her a heads up to mentally prepare for Yennefer's re-arrival. Ciri, though, is going through some difficulties because she's having these visions, these very vivid visions. It's blurring the future with the past. Like, she's envisioning how people die, and she wants to change it. She wants to warn them. But Yennefer tells her, you can't do that. This really frustrates Ciri, because she feels like the whole reason why she has these visions is so she can make a difference. But Yennefer, knowing all too well how changing one thing can impact thousands, doesn't want her to do anything. They continue on their way, and Yennefer stops by an old friend who's able to create portals. She knows her from Aretuza. They both were kind of kicked out of there. That's why Yennefer's friend, Kira, is really surprised when Yennefer says, I need a portal for Aretuza. Because Kira knows exactly what happened the last time Yen was there. Before they can get the portal, though, a guy comes in with a large amount of money asking for his own portal. But he also seems to have a prisoner. And when Ciri looks down at this poor kid, she sees how he dies. He's going to die if he goes through that portal. So Ciri just instinctively cuts him loose, tells him to run. And the man who wanted the initial portal gets pretty pissed off that his prisoner just escaped. He wants to kill Ciri. And Yennefer ends up killing him first. But Kira lets both of them know, you guys just made a horrible mistake. That is one of Huvinagel's men. If you don't want to get decapitated, you'll get the hell out of here. And Kira conjures a portal of her own and leaves. This really annoys Yennefer, who warns Ciri about doing something like this. But Ciri just doesn't understand the implications. And the more that Yennefer tries to explain to her why you shouldn't do such a thing, Ciri gets more and more annoyed. Until finally, Ciri crosses the line and says, what would you know about trying to stick up for your own life? Because there's only one side of Yennefer that Ciri knows. So Yennefer looks at her and says, okay, we're going to make a detour, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and I'm going to show you my life. And she takes her to the location of Yennefer's first home, where she grew up, and she's able to show her the life that Yennefer had, proving to Ciri that yes, at one point, I did, in fact, have to stick up for my own life. She then lets her know that she, at one point, let one soldier go, and now the whole continent is paying for consequences. So, the message is, ignore your visions for the time being. They both continue to make their way towards Aretuza, where they have a new teacher, Triss. She's taken to teaching the new mages. But as they all sit in their towers teaching, they know that there's a war raging on the outside. So the council kind of convenes quickly to talk about what they should do, if they should get involved or not. One person who's really frustrated is Stregobor. He puts all the blame on Tissaia, saying that she promised Ciri and she hasn't delivered, and if they want to resolve these issues, they'll just find her and kill her. Both Triss and Tissaia, however, fight back on that, saying that's not how they do business. Later that night, Tissaia ends up getting the letter that Yennefer sent, and her and Vilgefortz just sit down and discuss it, whether or not they think it's a good idea to welcome her back. Vilgefortz points out that this whole conversation, though, is pointless, because Tissaia's already made up her mind. He knows that she's going to welcome Yennefer back, and he supports it, because if Yennefer can forget the past, then he will as well. Tissaia then mentions how she's going to meet with Yennefer before she gets to Aretuza. She's going to surprise her and make sure that Yennefer isn't bringing any bad news their way. Some people might consider a Witcher bad news, but the Witcher, along with Jaskier, give Codringer and Fenn a visit, because they need to find out where Rience is and who's hired him. They give Geralt a pretty quick summary of Rience, just that he was kicked out of school, and that just supports the theory that he is in fact working for somebody else. As for who actually is calling the shots, they tell Geralt they don't know, but Geralt simply run out of money to get that kind of information, so it's actually unclear if they do know. But what they do tell him is whoever is pulling the strings is doing his business in this castle not too far away. Right as Geralt is leaving, Fenn says, "Oh, do give our best to the Elder Blood Princess." And that stops Geralt right in his tracks, because he never mentioned Ciri once, just that Rience was trying to kill a friend of his. Geralt walks back in the room up to Codringer and says, "You have a client looking for her?" And Codringer says, "Istrid." But Fenn pipes in and says, "You have to know, he isn't the only one willing to pay. If you want to save her, you need to find another girl." Geralt isn't about to do that. He and Jaskier start to walk out, and Jaskier starts floating the idea about Redania, saying, "Let's brainstorm some ideas on how to keep her safe on the way there." And then he realizes Geralt's not taking him with him. And he gets really pissed off at that, because he almost died for the cause. But Geralt says, "I can't protect you, so you're going to have to sit this one out, and when it's safe, I will come after you, Jaskier." So Geralt takes off to go to this castle, trying to find out any information he can on this mage, while Jaskier headed to Redania. He wanted to meet with Radovid. He tells Radovid that Geralt didn't have enough money to find out who Rience is working for, but Radovid, being a prince, he does have that kind of money. So if Radovid were to pay them a visit, find out the location, find out where Rience is, kill him, it would lead to Ciri being in Redania. Radovid vows to look into it. Once Jaskier leaves, he heads to dinner, where the king is once again waxing poetic about some story everybody's heard multiple times, but he tells both Dijkstra and Philippa what he had to say about Codringer and Fenn. The information that he's bringing them brings up a point that Philippa was trying to tell Dijkstra earlier in the day, that they can actually use this guy. He's not just an idiot. Philippa leaves the table saying she's going to have to pay them a visit. This gives Dijkstra an opportunity to tell him that Philippa seems to think he could be of use, but he's not so sure. And Radovid says, "You have to realize, everybody in this room is hiding something, including my brother. I know that you think that Vizimir doesn't hide secrets from you, but did you happen to know that he had a meeting last night with Nilfgaard?" And no, Dijkstra had no idea about that. He doesn't get a chance to tell Philippa this, because she may have gone to visit Codringer and Fenn a visit, but she shows up too late, because Rience got there first. He knows that the Witcher was there, and he demands to know where the Witcher is headed. Once he gets that information by threatening to burn their cat alive, he does it anyway. He sets the entire place on fire, and it would be a shock if those two senior citizens made it out alive. It's not really going to matter, though, because Geralt had arrived at that castle, and he could figure out it was a trap. It basically was a mad scientist's experiment room. You had these 3 heads jutting out from the wall, and then a monster of all of their limbs. One by one, Geralt had to kill all of them. But then there was something else in the corner. It was a girl who seemed to be closed in by this sort of embryo, but she looks a lot like Ciri. She also doesn't know how she got there. Once Geralt is able to defeat this monster and get her to safety, he asks her, "Who are you?" And she says, "You know who I am. I'm Ciri." And that freaks Geralt out. And then finally, we get an update on what happened to Cahir and Frangilla. Frangilla was made to be a poison tester for the White Flame, but she ended up faking her own death and escaping. While Cahir, he was forced to, just like many others, attack caravans. And Cahir was actually the one who Gallatin went to go visit. That was the old friend that he wanted to get help from. Gallatin tells Cahir all about his issues with Francesca and about how Francesca is so wrapped up in finding this girl. And as soon as he says that, Cahir knows exactly what he's talking about, but he doesn't let on. He doesn't say how important Ciri is. He just lets his friend ramble on about how Francesca is botching this whole thing for them. Cahir always told Gallatin that he should be in charge. So now, Gallatin's going to take him up on the offer, but they have to get approval from the White Flame first. In episode 3, both Cahir and Gallatin arrive at the castle and they meet with the White Flame. And Gallatin tells him, "Dude, this Francesca chick, she ain't it. You're ordering us to fight and soften the North? She's just searching for a girl." Just like with Cahir, the White Flame knows exactly what he's talking about, but he doesn't let on. Just telling Gallatin, "I want you to stay a while. We'll resolve this issue. Go get some food. We'll talk later." Once Gallatin leaves the room, it's just Cahir and the White Flame. And Cahir feels like this is a way he can get back into the White Flame's good graces. He tells him, "I'm not lying about this. I know I betrayed you before, but Ciri is out there. I've actually had dreams about her. I feel like she wants me to go find her." The White Flame kind of dismisses that, just pointing out that he tried that once. He failed. So Cahir pivots, praising Gallatin, saying he's a good fighter and he can deliver the North. But the White Flame isn't interested in Gallatin. He looks at Cahir and says, "I know a good leader when I see one." And that good leader is Cahir. He then demands that Cahir prove his loyalty by commanding him to kill Gallatin. So that night, Cahir goes and visits Gallatin. They have a chat about the usurper. And at one point, Cahir looks at him and says, "You know, when the White Flame freed me, he told me the usurper was a fool to let you go, son, because you were the strongest of them all." And then he plunged a dagger right into Gallatin's neck, killing him. Back over with Geralt, he has to figure out what to do about this girl who's claiming to be Ciri. He goes and, just like he said he would, he gets Jaskier. He shows him what he's dealing with. And they can tell that this girl is under some kind of spell. The Witcher is going to take her to a druid who used to be a friend of his mother's. The hope is that this druid can rid this poor girl of whatever is in her. The druid they're looking for is a woman named Annika, but when they get to the house, it's somebody else there as well, a man named Otto. They both know Geralt, because Otto is a werewolf, and years before, Geralt was hired by townspeople to kill him, but instead of doing that, Geralt found a solution to harness his power. So because of that, Otto has always been indebted to Geralt. They lay the girl down, Annika takes a look at her, and she knows that whoever did this to her is an extremely powerful mage. They combined a bunch of different kind of magic in order to put this spell on her. The way that Annika puts it, this poor girl's head is a tangled mess. Annika and Otto create an elixir for the girl, and they give it to her, but they do tell Geralt this is going to take some time, and there's no guarantee that it'll even work. But if it does, she'll be able to tell us who did this to her. While they wait to see if the elixir does work, Geralt and Jaskier head off into the woods to have a conversation because Geralt has heard through the grapevine that Jaskier was talking to Philippa. He's not mad at him, he just wants to know what Dijkstra wanted Jaskier to do. And Jaskier says he wanted me to deliver Ciri to Redania. And honestly, I think it's a good idea. It's the safest place for her. She'd have an army backing her. But that's not what Geralt wants. He doesn't want her life just to be sitting on a throne, pumping out royal babies. And Yasker points out that that is exactly what the role of a queen is. Unfortunately, they live a privileged life, and they're not asked to do much. She's a princess. This is the next step. They kind of get in a debate whether or not Ciri would actually want to do that. But what they both agree to is the fact that Ciri would absolutely not want to be a political pawn for Vizimir and Dijkstra. Jaskier warns Geralt that neutrality has its issues, and the issue that they currently find themselves in is proof of that. And Geralt's aware. He admits that he thought by taking Ciri off the board, the world would stop trying to use her, but instead, they're finding people to put in her place. Like this poor girl who's sitting in a hut waiting to wake up. They then walk in, and Geralt tries to wake the girl up and find out some information. Both Otto and Annika warn him that he's doing this way too early, and it could ruin the extraction spell. And it seems like they were right. Geralt is able to extract some information from this girl, like her name is actually Terran, and that she was in school at Aretuza. She was taken by a man from her room that always scared her. There was another man there with a scar on his face, and there was a woman with a funny voice. They all helped this man. But before Geralt can get any more information from her, the extraction spell turns, and she starts lashing out. They're able to quell the situation, but Annika does get injured in the process. As Annika is resting in bed, Geralt is by her side, and they decide to have a chat. They have a conversation about his mother, and because of the way that he was left, he vows to never leave Ciri. He does ask her, hey, can Terran stay with you while I figure out a way to help her? And Annika says, of course, but where are you going? And Geralt says, I'm going to Aretuza. And hey, as it just so happens, that is where Yennefer and Ciri are still headed. They stop off in a town and they go to a bank where Yennefer has some big fans. The head of the bank is indebted to her because she helped him out years ago. She gets some money and then she asks for a babysitter for Ciri because she has to go handle some matters and she doesn't want to drag Ciri along. It's not going to be long, but Ciri is still a little bit concerned. Because of this, Yennefer creates a spell, puts it in a necklace, and tells Ciri that she just has to hold it, recite a chant, and then someone should come and help her. It's called a locator spell. While Ciri is left behind, Yennefer goes and has a private conversation in Aretuza with Tissaia. She wants to make sure that Tissaia would be on board with keeping Ciri safe. The first thing Yennefer does is apologize for everything that she put Tissaia through. But then she brings up Rience and how Rience is after Ciri. And they can't let Rience get to her. Tissaia, who's a little baffled, says, you want me to help hide a princess whose existence means war? If war is coming, there's no hiding her from it. But Yennefer says maybe she can lead us out of it. For all the Brotherhood's faults, they respect magic, and this girl has it, and then some. She begs for Tissaia's help, and the only thing Tissaia says is, after all this time, you finally did it. You became a mother. As they were chatting about Ciri and her safety, Ciri was getting into trouble. There was a show in the middle of the town. A guy showing off what he claimed were some monsters, but Ciri called him out on the BS. The monster that he did have, however, got freed, and Ciri ended up killing it. Although as soon as she did, she realized, oh crap, I need to lay low because I am not incognito anymore. She tried to get out of there, but she realized that she had lost her money. And there was a girl who had been watching her the entire time and watched how she handled herself when she was put up against this monster. And while the girl was impressed, the girl snatched her coin purse and headed off with it. Because she had no money and she certainly did not trust the chaperone that was with her, she ran off and she tried to use the locator spell, but it wasn't working. And then she got caught by a teacher, ironically, from Aretuza. She demanded that Ciri get back to the dorms, but Ciri fought back, and the woman slapped the crap out of her. And that is when Yennefer shows up just in the nick of time to rescue Ciri and save her from anything else that could happen. Yennefer's not alone, though. Tissaia is also with her. And Rita, the woman who caught Ciri, and Sabrina, another teacher, accepted Yennefer's apology. Tissaia then walked up to Ciri and just looked into her eyes. This results in a staring contest that Tissaia loses, because she starts bleeding from the eye. She would have kept going, but Yennefer stopped it, seeing what was going to happen. In order to kind of calm the situation down, Yennefer agrees to buy both Sabrina and Rita lunch at a male brothel. Ciri comes too, but she's tasked by getting them wine, and she doesn't really take too kindly to that at all. Rita especially is pretty demanding, and finally Ciri gets tired of it and tells her, "Get your own damn wine." And Yennefer has to pull her aside and yell at her. Ciri starts ranting about how horrible these women are, this place is, all of it. And Yennefer reminds her, "You're not a princess here. You're a low-level novice, and you better get used to being treated like one." Ciri shakes her head and says, "I don't want to do this." And Yennefer says, "I don't want to do this either. I don't want to walk back to the council with my tail between my legs, but I'm going to do it. Because Aretuza is my best hope for protecting you from those who hunt you." The argument continues. It gets even more and more heated. And it ends with Yennefer telling her, "I'm not Geralt. This isn't Kaer Morhen. This is the version of myself that I have to be here. So you need to find a version of yourself that can deal with that." Yennefer storms out and then has a conversation with Tissaia. The stress of this whole situation is getting to Yennefer. The fact that even if she does all of this, at the end of the day, war is coming and Ciri's at the center of it. But Tissaia reassures her, "We'll find a way." Yennefer's still concerned, and she says, "If we are to unite the North, we must be united." She then gets an idea. They should hold a conclave. Yeah, sure, the last one didn't go well. It was a disaster that ended in a war, but this could be different. Instead of discord and debate, they focus on trust, togetherness, being one united front. It's a good idea, but if it happens, there's a pretty good chance Ciri won't be there, because she wasn't willing to find a version of herself that was going to accept this version of Yennefer. She snuck out, and she started whispering to the location spell, begging for Geralt. As she was fleeing, she got chased by members of the Wild Hunt. Right as they caught up to her and yelled, "Join us," she was saved by Geralt. He destroyed all of them, sending them back to where they came from, but there's one concerning thing. There's a piece of armor sitting on the ground, and Ciri gets really concerned because they were real. But they aren't the only ones searching for her. King Vizimir is certainly still looking for Ciri, and while that should be Dijkstra's main concern, his main concern is the fact that Vizimir had this secret meeting with Nilfgaard. And when he finally reveals to Dijkstra exactly the parameters of this meeting, it's a horrible deal for Redania. I mean, it's really, really bad. And even though Dijkstra tries to tell Vizimir that he needs to back off this deal, Vizimir is just too stupid to understand that it's horrible for his people. Dijkstra and Philippa realize that they need to do something about this. With Radovid listening in the corner, both of them discuss the fact that they know Vizimir is kind of being led by his wife, Hedwig. They figure that it's time for Hedwig to be useful, but for them. Philippa then gets to the matter of Rience. She found a portal and she went through it, and she knows that he's being backed by some artsy kind of person, but other than that, it's a dead end. She also mentioned how the portal itself just felt different. It felt more powerful. He feels like it's time maybe she talked to Tissaia about what it might mean, but Philippa is totally against doing that. Dijkstra, however, points out that if what the bard says is true, then they need to hurry up. Because if the Witcher finds Rience first, then they lose the girl, they lose the leverage, they lose everything. Philippa knows this, and that's why they have to act now. They have to convince the king to change his mind. Philippa wants Dijkstra to include Radovid, but he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't think that he needs his help. And in this instance, it's true. Because Dijkstra's scheme on how to get King Vizimir to change his mind is brilliant. He has somebody leave Radovid a box saying that it's for the king. So Radovid walks in with this box, and it says courtesy of Nilfgaard. But when he opens it up, it's his wife's severed head. Dijkstra goes right into action, demanding that all the gates be closed, nobody in or out. And then he whispers to the king, who is sobbing, "I swear to you, I will not let them get away with this." But once the king leaves the room, Dijkstra's whole mood changes, because he planned this whole thing. And Radovid is disgusted by it. He can't believe that Dijkstra would stoop this low. He threatens to tell his brother, but Dijkstra says, "Go ahead, tell him." You're going to tell him that his wife got assassinated on your watch, and then you were the one who brought her head in a box? I'm his most important advisor. Remember that. Shut your mouth or it'll be your head next. While all of that was going on, not too far away in the castle, Philippa was hooking up with the person who actually cut the head off. Philippa's mind, however, is so consumed with how this secret meeting with Nilfgaard even happened. She's put protection spells on the castle. Nobody should have been able to get in or out without her knowing. She also knows that the White Flame uses mages as cannon fodder, not emissaries. The girl who Philippa is hooking up with mentioned how the woman in the meeting from Nilfgaard didn't talk with her mouth. And that means she was using telepathy. And that is when Philippa realizes that the mage backing Rience works for Nilfgaard. And it's kind of true. The woman that they're talking about is Lydia. Rience was working for Lydia. Lydia was working for Stregobor. And Rience is not happy at all that he was doing Nilfgaard's bidding. He tells Lydia to tell Stregobor that he's sick of being in the dark, and if he wants him to go along with this plan, he's got his own demand. In episode 4, Cahir is still kind of traumatized the next day after killing his friend, but the White Flame wants to thrust him right into action, even though Cahir isn't really ready for that. The next person he wants him to kill is Francesca, and that's going to be difficult. He asks the White Flame for help, specifically Frangilla. He hasn't gotten an update on what happened to her, and the White Flame says she's dead. Of course, she's not. Nobody knows that. She's actually partying it up drunk in a tavern. So unfortunately for Cahir, he's going to have to go this one alone. When he does eventually show up in the woods and rejoins Francesca's army, they're surprised to see him. The story he tells them is that they went to the White Flame and Gallatin tried to stage a coup, but the White Flame ended up backing Francesca. And that's something that Dara just does not believe. The conversation, though, isn't contentious at first, although Francesca is a little weary about Cahir's real motives. But what does help is the fact that Cahir didn't come empty-handed. He came with a bunch of food. He also brought weapons, and it's a peace offering saying that he wants Francesca and the rest of the elves to help find Centrilla. They both tell each other why they're searching for Ciri, and Cahir says there is a way to get what we both want, but it's going to require cooperation. Dara urges Francesca not to go along with this scheme, and she is hesitant, so she asks Cahir, what happened with Frangilla? Did she try to stage a coup too? It seems like there's a theme with the people that trust you. So why should I join them? And Cahir is blunt, telling her it's the only choice you've got. He then pulls out a piece of paper and shows her what he calls their first mission as allies. As for Yennefer, she finally made her way to Aretuza, and she makes her plea to the Brotherhood on why they should have this conclave. People like Stregobor are completely against the idea, but it's only because Yennefer is the one who came up with it. But Yennefer is able to convince the entire group that this is what's best. So invitations go out. They're going to have a conclave amongst the mages. Once the meeting with the Brotherhood is over, Tissaia, along with Yennefer, have a conversation about the success that they just had, but they get interrupted by Triss, who notice that one of the students, they're gone. The room is empty. And Tissaia doesn't really think much of it, but Triss is concerned. Because lately, this has been a trend. Students just up and vanished, missing. Triss needs to look into this further, so she heads to the library, where she runs into Istrid. She's surprised to see him, but before they get into the reason why he's there, she looks at a ledger of a bunch of the novices who went missing, and she notices a trend. They're all elven. That's when she finds out why Istrid is there. Because he's been looking for this book on monoliths, but somebody beat him to it. Getting the hands on the book is really important because it could offer elves safety. The reason he showed up early is because he knows that somebody from Aretuza has that book. Now he's thinking that the same person who's kidnapping these novices is the same person who has the book. For sure, it is a concern, but it's one that Triss is going to have to wait to tell Yennefer about, because Yennefer had to head to Redania to go to the funeral services for Hedwig. Before the services kick off, Dijkstra sends a messenger to send reinforcements to Aretuza, But that messenger gets killed on his way there, never delivering the message. And he was actually the first one that Ciri had a vision of. He was the first one that Ciri wanted to warn about his impending death, but she never got the chance to. While this guy was riding off to his death, Philippa gives Dijkstra an update on the fact that all communication from Nilfgaard goes through the woman without this voice. As far as Nilfgaard's concerned, they don't claim Rience at all. These two have been scheming, though. They're planning on breaking up this little party at Aretuza and start pointing fingers. And the way that Dijkstra's planned it, he feels like it's only a matter of time before everybody is fighting on their behalf. The death of Hedwig has really gained them a lot of sympathy favor. A little while later, though, the funeral service kicks off, and a very unwanted Yennefer shows up. She showed up to offer her condolences, but in reality, she showed up to convince Philippa to come to the conclave. As Yennefer tries to convince Philippa to put her bad blood with the Brotherhood aside and show up in good faith, the king is vowing vengeance against Nilfgaard. Once the funeral is over, that's when Yennefer steps up and talks to the king, even though Dijkstra tried his hardest to avoid this. She starts off by apologizing for what the king has gone through recently, trying to curry favor with him, and she's able to convince the king to order Philippa to go by telling him that in times like this, the king needs more protection, the kind that the Brotherhood has to offer. The king allows Philippa to go, but he also commands Dijkstra and Radovid to escort her there, and he won't take no for an answer. Once she gets the answer she wants, Yennefer tries to portal out of there, but her portal doesn't go to where she expected. It goes to the edge of a cliff. And then suddenly, she sees Geralt. Geralt asks where's Ciri. Yennefer's really confused, and then Geralt attacks her. Yennefer is able to hold him off and eventually just destroy this fake Geralt and portal out of there, but she is really, really concerned because she has no idea how this happened. The noise of her returning to Aretuza gets Triss and Sabrina to run in to find out if she's okay. Yennefer explains to both of them that the portal she just was in was corrupted somehow. She wants to tell Tissaia about it, but Triss says don't. I know you want this conclave to work, but something else is going on here, and you need to be careful who you can trust. Triss then warns her about the idea of bringing Ciri to Aretuza, thinking that it's not safe, especially for people with elven blood. But Yennefer doesn't want to hear it. When she walks out of the room, Triss notices a dust that was left behind when Yennefer portaled in, and she realizes that it's Stellacite. Triss knows that one person she can trust is Istrid. She finds Istrid and explains how Yennefer was attacked in the portal, but because of it, she has a way to prove Istrid's theory correct. They think that the missing elves and the missing book are connected. Well, with the Stellacite dust, it probably is on the book as well. Using a simple spell, they should be able to locate it. Through using the spell, they're able to locate a door. Behind that door, that's where the book will be. And it seems like by their reaction, they know exactly whose door that is. Now, while they were going through the spell, Yennefer was going to meet with Geralt, Jaskier, and Ciri. They had to take a boat to get to Aretuza, and it was a rocky journey. They faced a monster, and it was actually Ciri who held her own and ended up killing it. It made Geralt really proud. Once they get off the boat, they start making their way towards Aretuza, / making their way towards Yennefer, and that's when Geralt decides to tell her about Terran. He tells her that whoever Rience is working for, well, their ultimate plan is to manipulate Ciri. They use Terran as a test subject. Ciri, however, isn't worried about it. She wants to protect the women who are hurt, and also find the mage who's behind all of this. So there ain't no way she's turning around. By nightfall, they finally run into Yennefer, and it's a little awkward. Ciri apologized to Yennefer for leaving. Yennefer apologized to Ciri for putting her in that situation. And then they task Jaskier with looking after Ciri in a cabin. Geralt is to be Yennefer's date at the conclave. After Jaskier puts her to bed, though, he notices something outside, and he's surprised because it's Radovid, who showed up looking for him. And that night, they hook up, because there has been some sexual tension every time the two talk. Back at Aretuza, Yennefer fills Geralt in on this corrupted portal, and the fake Geralt that she had to destroy. They know that whoever backing Rience is in the castle. Now the question is, who is it? Who is it that uses illusions, hates Yennefer, and has a history of experimenting on young women? It doesn't take him too long to figure out that that person is Stregobor. Geralt wants to go kill him right on the spot, but Yennefer says, no, we can't do that. If you do, then the Brotherhood is going to wage war. We need to have proof that he's the one doing it. While he doesn't agree with it, Geralt agrees to let this play out at the Conclave. And in the Part 1 finale, it is the ball, the day before the Conclave. Everybody shows up, and it's going to be a party. And for some, it certainly is, but for others, it's scheming, planning, trying to figure out who among them is after Cirilla. As soon as they walk in, all eyes are on Geralt and Yennefer. Yennefer just goes around the room telling Geralt who everybody is and why they're staring at him, because they've never had a Witcher in Aretuza. One of the first people to come up to him is Sabrina. She starts hitting on Geralt with telepathy, but Geralt ain't having it. And one of the reasons why she's hitting on him is because somebody spiked the wine with an aphrodisiac. They did the same thing to caviar. They're trying to make this thing a giant orgy, and, I'm for it. But for someone like The Witcher and Yennefer, they have to keep their mind clear. It's not like Geralt knew this, though. He was tipped off by Philippa. He mentions how she had tried to get Jaskier to do her bidding, but it's not going to work. She's not getting Ciri. Philippa then brings up the demise of Codringer and Fenn. That is something Geralt didn't know, which is a little bit of a surprise to Philippa because she knows that The Witcher is after Rience. They start posturing a little bit as to why either of them are there, because it's pretty clear that both have information that they're withholding, but they get interrupted by Dijkstra. Dijkstra asks Philippa to speak to The Witcher alone, and his message is quite clear. A war is coming, and neutrality isn't going to do him any good. He needs to pick a side. Obviously, he would like The Witcher to join his side. Geralt's not interested in it, and he doesn't take kindly to when Dijkstra says, give us the girl before it's too late. Geralt just simply walks away. As Geralt was walking away from Dijkstra, Yennefer was busy chatting with Tissaia and Vilgefortz. But they end up getting an old friend. It's Philippa. After she got kicked out of the conversation with Dijkstra and Geralt, she walked over and had a very uncomfortable interaction with her old friend, Tissaia. After the uncomfortableness, Philippa asks Yennefer if she can speak with her alone. She feels like her and Yennefer are very similar, and she doesn't relate to a lot of the mages that are at this thing. Much like with Dijkstra and Geralt, Philippa tries to get Yennefer on her side, saying, there's still time for you. Traitors are already working with Nilfgaard. Now, do what you want, but I'm telling you, if you and Tissaia stick to this plan, neither of you will be better off than Lydia. And then she points out that Lydia is at the party. Yennefer then thanks her for coming, telling her it means everything to him. And right after Yennefer leaves, Philippa says, well, tonight means everything for us as well. This whole conversation was being seen from up top by Geralt and Vilgefortz. After a run-in with Stregobor, Geralt needed to just take some time, get some air, be by himself before he killed this guy. And in doing so, he ran into Vilgefortz. And Vilgefortz makes the same plea that a lot of people have made. He begs Geralt to join his side in the battle to come. But Geralt says no. He's not willing to change his neutrality. In one last plea, Vilgefortz tells him, your neutrality isn't going to save Ciri. But Geralt isn't falling for that. He just walks away. Geralt walks down and rejoins Yennefer on the dance floor, and they start discussing how exactly they're going to get proof about what Stregobor did. They know they need to distract him for enough time that allows Yennefer to get to his room. Istrid had already told Yennefer about the book, and that it is, in fact, located in Stregobor's office. So in order to make this happen, Geralt, along with Istrid, decide to create a distraction, causing a big scene acting like they're fighting over Yennefer, when in reality, they're just trying to give Yennefer enough time to get to the office and find proof. And for a little bit, it was working great, but the lock that Stregobor had used released a butterfly, and when that butterfly found Stregobor, he realized that somebody was where they weren't supposed to be. Yennefer is quickly able to find proof. She's able to find items from these taken elven novices. It all but indicts Stregobor. She's caught, but she's saved when members of the Brotherhood show up and want to know exactly what's going on. And that's when Yennefer, Geralt, Istrid, They all point out that Stregobor is guilty of a lot of bad stuff. Istrid is able to find the book of monoliths, and that all but seals his fate. Tissaia isn't willing to just execute him, though. She does want to handle this thing properly and put him on trial, but she wants to wait until after the conclave to do so. For the meantime, he will be locked up, and she will take the Book of Monoliths and make sure it's safe. Stregobor kind of looked for an ally in Vilgefortz, but he doesn't find one. I mean, there's just way too much proof. So by the time the night wraps up, it has been a big success for Geralt and Yennefer. I mean, it seems like they really did pull this thing off. But when they get back to the room, the more they talk about the night, they start intertwining each other's stories, and there's just weird things that happen. One of the first ones that Geralt notices is, why exactly did Philippa point out Lydia? What exactly does she have to do with anything? And when Yennefer points out that Lydia communicates telepathically, that's when Geralt remembers exactly what Terran said about the woman with the weird voice. The other thing that he notices is Yennefer was wearing Tissaia's bracelet. They're very unique looking, whatever they're made of, and Geralt recognized it because he's pretty sure when he did pass by Lydia, she was wearing earrings made of the same item. They're trying to explain why he saw Lydia. Geralt mentions how he ran into Vilgefortz, and Vilgefortz mentioned the battle to come. And that comes as a really big surprise to Yennefer, because Vilgefortz encouraged the Conclave to ensure peace, but now he's talking about a battle. Something isn't adding up. Yennefer also goes into great detail about where her corrupted portal sent her, and Geralt recognized the description because, as it turns out, it's Vilgefortz's favorite painting. He had told Geralt all about it earlier in the day when he was trying to court him to his side. On top of it, Vilgefortz is the one who gave Tissaia this particular bracelet, the one that matches the earrings that Lydia was wearing. Both the earrings and the bracelet are made of something called scarlet ammonite. Scarlet ammonite is only found in the mines in West Redania, where the castle that the experiments were taking place was. The light bulb then turns on and they realize that Stregobor wasn't their guy. Vilgefortz is. Geralt goes and grabs his sword because he wants to right this wrong, while Yennefer goes and grabs the necklace because she wants to locate Tissaia. She wants to warn Tissaia if she is in danger. Geralt begs her to leave with him because he knows that it's no longer safe and they need to get out of there. But Yennefer yells back, "I'm not leaving Tissaia." While she tries to locate Tissaia, she commands Geralt to get out, make sure the pathway is clear for them to escape. Geralt does end up leaving his room, and he can faintly hear a woman yelling to secure the Great Hall, put a man there, put a man over here, directing traffic, if you will. As he's slowly making his way down the hall, proceeding with extreme caution because he has no idea what's around the corner, that's when Dijkstra puts a knife to his throat, telling him, "Should have joined our side." In episode 6, Dijkstra is real proud of himself for getting the jump on Geralt. He tells him, though, that he's kind of just taking him prisoner until they're done rounding up the mages that they want. And that's what Dijkstra's soldiers are doing. They're rounding up a bunch of mages. Now, some mages have actually joined them in this, but one of them is not Yennefer. She covertly sneaks out of the room and sees Geralt's sword and realizes that something is wrong with their little plan. Using her magic, she's able to hide from the soldiers, but also speak to Ciri and wake her up, because she knows that all of this has been orchestrated, not just to round up mages, but also to get Ciri. And getting Ciri was supposed to be Radiviv's job. It's one of the whole reasons he slept with Jaskier, but Jaskier catches him early in the morning trying to get to Ciri, and he confronts him about it. He's pissed off that he was used. Radovid makes this play to Jaskier that this is the best thing for Ciri and for the continent, but also that he actually had true feelings for him, and Jaskier tells him to kick rocks. Either way, Radovid ain't leaving with Ciri. Ciri's already escaped. And so is Yennefer. She's out to find Ciri and protect her. While trying to sneak out of Aretuza, though, she does run into Lydia, who, just like Dijkstra, is real arrogant and pompous about the whole situation. She starts telepathically speaking to Yen, telling her that what she's trying to do is pointless. It's too late. They're going to have the girl. Lydia is also not going to allow Yennefer to just walk out. She starts attacking Yen, and she is really powerful. Yen is only saved when Marigold shows up and kills Lydia. Yennefer, though, is going on this one alone. Marigold heads up to help with the coup. And it should be pretty easy for Marigold to find the location of all of the mages that are chained up because Dijkstra and company have put them all in one room. As Geralt walks in and sees what's upon him, he asks Dijkstra why are they being chained up, and Dijkstra says, well, they're spies, weakening us for Nilfgaard's march of conquest. They're not all traitors, though, just Vilgefortz and his cronies, but the rest are going to bear witness to what we do to them. And what you've got is all of these mages chained up, and when they're chained up, they can't use their powers. Dijkstra goes on to tell Geralt that they have ample evidence regarding Vilgefortz's connection with Nilfgaard. But they're not looking to hold a trial, they're looking to hold a purge. Now, one mage who is not bound in chains is Tissaia. She was supposed to be, but the two that came for her, Tissaia told them that she'd melt their faces if they do that to her. So her hands are free. And when she walks in the room, she sees all of her fellow mages chained up, and they're all begging her to unbound these chains using her powers. But Dijkstra tells Tissaia exactly what he told Geralt, that they have proof of Vilgefortz using portals to connect Aretuza with Nilfgaard. You've got people like Arturus who just flat out do not believe that, but Dijkstra's group tells the entire room that they know Vilgefortz has had Rience doing his dirty work. Vilgefortz, though, tries to deflect. He says that Dijkstra and Philippa should be on trial. But Geralt speaks up and says, well, there is credence to what they're saying. You did know this was coming. You mentioned it yesterday. Geralt, though, then notices that there is a fog coming in. It's pretty unnatural, and he tells the group that someone is using it to conceal ships. Vilgefortz then pleads to Tissaia, saying, don't you see it's a Redanian army? They're coming for us. He starts begging Tissaia to break this binding spell and allow them to use their magic to defend Aretuza. And after a little more pleading, she finally does it, and the mages start attacking their captors. While all the fighting is going on, Dijkstra tries to sneak out, but Geralt isn't letting him walk out the door. Dijkstra tells Geralt it's too late. You know what? I'll just tell you where we've taken her. Because at this point, Dijkstra is convinced that Redania has Ciri, but they don't. Geralt decides to respond by attacking him, breaking his leg, messing him up pretty good, and then leaving him there crying on the floor. He then heads off to go find Ciri and protect her. But back where he just came from, the mages make quick work of their captors. Now they just have to deal with this Redanian army that's coming. Tissaia sees Vilgefortz leave the room, and she chases after him, saying, we can take the Redanians out if we just unite and trap them in the tunnels. That's when Vilgefortz comes clean. He tells her that's not going to happen. The Scoia'tael will enter this place and burn it to the ground in the name of the White Flame. And it's at that moment that Tissaia realizes she's been played this entire time. She asks Vilgefortz, why would you do this? This is our home. And he corrects her and says, no, this is your home. I don't care who destroys this place. I have my own goals, and they no longer include you. Stregobor, with his pride, he was easy to set up, and you've got your undying trust. You were easy to fool. He then turns around and, using his powers, he gives the Redanian army the gateway they would need to enter Aretuza. But when the army does enter, it's not Redanian, it's Elven. It's Francesca and Filavandrel and all of them. They're ready to take back what they feel like is theirs, but Tissaia and the rest of the mages are ready to defend it at all costs. This starts a pretty big war between the two factions. Filavandrel, R.I.P., he perishes. That really messes up Francesca. Arturus, though, also dies. He dies, though, at the hand of his niece, because Frangilla is back and she's helping the elves. Those are the two big losses. Most of the soldiers, though, die when this ring of fire ends up falling out of the sky that was put up there by Philippa and brought down by Francesca. So Aretuza's not doing so well. It's pretty much up in smoke. You can see it from pretty far away. But Ciri, she doesn't notice it because she finally finds Yennefer, and that's all she cares about. They, however, are attacked by Rience. Ciri goes after Rience, but it doesn't take too long for him to surround her in a ring of fire. Yennefer isn't worried at first because he says, you're not going to kill her. Your master wants her alive. But Rience says, I have no master. And that's when Yennefer is forced to pivot. She does have an ace up her sleeve. She acts like she's putting down her weapon, which is her sword, but she throws it, and it's caught by Geralt, who cuts Rience's head off. and now the trio is reunited. Geralt tells Yennefer that she was right. Vilgefortz is at the center of all of this. He brought Nilfgaard and the Scoia'tael, and they're all searching for one person, and it's Ciri. Because of it, he says we need to get off this island. But then Yennefer notices the smoke that is coming from Aretuza, and she knows that Tissaia is in danger. She can see from the sky that Tissaia is summoning Alzur's Thunder, which is the spell of the last resort. She knows that Tissaia and the rest of the mages are in danger. Ciri turns to Yennefer and says, "Go to her. We'll be okay. Help your friend." When Yennefer finally does arrive back in Aretuza, it's at the last stand stage of this battle, and the elves are winning. The mages are completely outnumbered. Yennefer is ready to defend Aretuza, but she gets a little bit of help from Stregobor of all people. He promises to take on the entire elven army in order to buy Yennefer and the other mages some time to escape, because Aretuza is crumbling. Outside, Ciri and Geralt are also trying to figure out a way off the island. They then hear a horse in the distance, and it's Cahir. As soon as she sees him, Ciri wants to kill this guy. She has vengeance on her mind, and she attacks him, but all Cahir does is defend himself. He doesn't really attack back. He finally throws his sword down and says, "I'm not going to fight you. Back in Sintra, when I took you, I did everything I was asked with no hesitation. But now, I can't stop asking questions. I've discovered that I was wrong, and I can't give you back the life I stole. But I can offer you my life. So take it." But as Ciri is contemplating her move, they hear horses in the distance, and it's the Scoia'tael, that sort of elven mercenary group. They're coming for Ciri. When he sees them in the distance, Cahir jumps up and says, "Go. I will find you." Because he's going to hold them off and hopefully allow Ciri and Geralt to escape. They head down to the boats that the elves use to get into Aretuza, but right before they're about to leave, Geralt senses that they're not alone. He turns to Ciri and says, "Go, run away. I'll take care of this." And he's right, they're not. Vilgefortz is down there as well. After opening up the portal for the elves, he headed to Tissaia's room where he found Istrid with the book. He didn't kill Istrid or take it from him. Instead, he pushed him through a portal where he knows that he can find him again. He then realized that some people might want to escape, that person being Cirilla, so he headed down to the only place where she would be able to, the beach. Standing in his way, though, is Geralt. And Geralt's a really formidable opponent, but Vilgefortz, he's got magic on his side, he's well-trained, and he beats the ever-loving crap out of Geralt. With Geralt badly injured, Vilgefortz doesn't finish him off. Instead, he heads to go find Ciri, and he knows where she's going. She's going to Tor Alora. It's that giant tower next to Aretuza that's used as a sort of lightning conductor. Sure enough, Ciri is indeed there, but when he comes across her, she's talking to the wall. Ciri's getting some kind of message from it. She's seeing symbols, but she doesn't know what it means. Vilgefortz tells Cirilla, "You're not ready for this kind of power." But Cirilla seems to be tuning him out. The power from this wall, it's getting stronger. Until finally, it seems to explode, throwing Vilgefortz way back. But there's a visual explosion from the tower that can be seen. It can be seen by the elves, who are badly beaten. It can also be seen by the mages, which include Yennefer and an exhausted Tissaia. They watch as it crumbles to the ground. And as for Geralt, he's on death's door, but he's saved by Marigold. Now, you might be wondering where Ciri went. Well, in episode 7, we get the answer to that. She went to a place called the Frying Pan. They call it the Frying Pan because it's a vast desert. There's no one around. At least, not at first. Ciri does get the sense that there is somebody else there with her, and in actuality, there is. But as soon as she arrives, she disappears. She's kind of just watching Ciri from a distance. After Ciri resets her dislocated arm, she has to figure out how to get out of the desert. Her first attempt is to try to get a hold of Yennefer, using that locator coin that Yennefer gave her a while back. Although, it doesn't work this time. Ciri realizes this is going to be all on her. She starts walking all day, but the elements are really, really starting to get to her. But it's not like she has a choice. She has to keep going. Day turns into night. She starts hallucinating a little bit, thinking about past memories, thinking about life with Geralt and Yennefer, and really using that as motivation to try to get out of the desert and keep going. Day 2, she thinks she sees water, which is a big relief because she's hungry and she's thirsty, but it's this clear goo. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to her. That clear goo, though, is the saliva of this giant sand monster that attacks Ciri. Ciri, though, still has her instincts, so she's able to avoid danger and get out of its mouth before it clamps down. While the monster goes away, something else returns in its place. A unicorn. A full-on, real unicorn. Actually, Ciri doesn't know if it's real because the unicorn won't let Ciri touch it. Instead, it seems to be leading Ciri towards something. The bad news is, when the unicorn goes over a hill, Ciri loses it. She doesn't know where it went. Ciri has no choice but to continue walking in the desert. The elements that plagued her a day ago are getting worse and worse. Her stomach getting emptier and emptier. She sees a lizard, and she finds the lizard's eggs, and she starts chowing down on them. And then she's visited by her first apparition. It's one of her mother. At first, her mother is nice, giving her a hug. Seems to really enjoy seeing Ciri. But then her mother completely turns on her. She starts saying things to Ciri, like how Geralt must have been relieved to see Ciri go into that tower and then watch the tower explode, because Ciri has just been such a cross to bear. It makes Ciri feel like complete crap. But the insults don't continue for very long because the apparition goes away. The fact that that whole conversation didn't happen, or the fact that it might have hit too close to home, ends up boiling up in Ciri, and she takes her frustration out on the lizard she finds by eating it. That was a bad decision, though. The lizard doesn't sit well in her stomach. She starts throwing it up. And then suddenly she finds herself not in a desert, but in a room with the person who's been following her this entire time. It's a woman in a cloak. You can't see her face. She starts giving Ciri some advice, like, don't eat the lizards, they're poisonous. And when Ciri asks who she is, she simply says, I'm the past, and this is the future. Or at least a possible one. Ciri mumbles to herself how she must be going insane, but this person says, powerful women, they've been labeled insane since the dawn of time. I was labeled insane. We actually have a lot in common. We were both, quote, insane princesses that were abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect us. At least your family that royally screwed you over had the decency to die. I had to kill mine. And the fact that this person killed their own family comes as a real surprise to Ciri. Ciri reveals to this person that she feels like she has the power to change things. And the woman says, you're not the first person to feel that way, but you could be the last. And then the woman completely disappears. When Ciri wakes up the next morning, she's just sleeping on rocks. She's not alone, though. The unicorn has come back. And the unicorn leads Ciri to water in the middle of the desert. With a little bit more energy, Ciri and the unicorn continue to make their way through the desert, and at least now Ciri has someone to talk to. And boy, does she. She fills the horse in on everybody. Doesn't really seem like the horse is talking back, though. But the next day, Ciri has her second apparition. This time, it's Queen Calante. And if Ciri thought her mom was mean, it was nothing compared to what Calante was. She was downright vitriolic. Ciri, though, sticks up for herself. When Calante blames Ciri for things, Ciri reminds Calante that she allowed Sintra to just burn away into dust and oblivion. Ciri, though, gets so frustrated by what Calante continues to say about her that she tries to punch her, but it goes right through Calante and goes right into a rock. The apparition of Calante goes away, but the injured hand, that's still there. That was dumb. And the mystery-shrouded woman reminds Ciri of that when she visits her that night. Although this time, the woman reveals herself. Her name is Falca, and Ciri knows exactly who she is. Because the stories of Falca are that she was a demon, a cursed elven monster. But Falca, her side of the story is a little bit different. She felt like she should have been queen, but when her father denied her her royal destiny, she decided to rally the common folk. With the common folk's help, she took back what was rightfully hers, but she did so using blood and fire. It was kind of fitting, since in the end they tied her to a stake and burned her alive. Ciri is disgusted by what Falca did, but Falca defends her actions. Falca trying to point out to Ciri that it's really all the people around her who should be to blame for how she feels, and Ciri reminding Falca that she burned her family and led a rebellion. Falco finally says to Ciri, if you want to change the system, burn it to the ground. And then she disappears. The next morning, Ciri is awoken by her unicorn. They continue to walk the desert when they're attacked by a giant sand monster. All that Witcher training pays off. Ciri destroys it, but the unicorn is injured in the process. Ciri does her best to patch the unicorn up, and the unicorn and Ciri continue to walk until finally the injury becomes too much for the unicorn, and the unicorn has to lay down. Ciri creates a little bit of a camp with a fire, but she's trying to heal this unicorn. Unfortunately, there's nothing she can draw magic from. And that's when Falco once again returns. She tells Ciri there is something you can draw magic from, and she points to the fire. Ciri is really hesitant to do this because she's been warned about how dangerous fire magic is, and at Aretuza it's banned. But with a little bit of nudge from Falco, she decides to give in because it is the only option to save the unicorn. She sticks her hand in the fire, she's feeling the power, she's controlling it, and she is able to heal this unicorn. As soon as the unicorn is healed, it gets up and runs off. It's pretty rude, doesn't even say thank you. Ciri's kind of upset about the fact that the unicorn ran away and tries to stop it, but Falco says, no, don't. Those who are afraid of what you are dead weight. Let them go. Ciri then notices that her hand still is controlling the fire. And Falco says, it feels amazing, doesn't it? And to think you've had this power inside you your entire life. You just didn't harness it. Ciri does admit that this power feels easy. It comes naturally to her. Falco says to Ciri that the power is a gift. One that they'll either wish to use you for or destroy you for. But it certainly isn't a curse. And that's what it's been made out to be. She then pushes Ciri into the fire and Ciri is consumed by it. But she goes to this other kind of world where she's in the middle of fire, harnessing the power, while Falco discusses how her friends will eventually turn on her and become her enemy. So Ciri, in order to prevent this, really needs to get ahead of it and kill them. Ciri starts crying, saying, I don't want this. But Falco says, this is your destiny. Ciri continues to say, I don't want this, and she's hearing voices. And finally, she just blurts out, I relinquish my powers. And it's all over. She wakes up in the middle of the desert, although this time she's not alone. There are 4 people around her, and they know who she is, because Ciri's wanted. The White Flame has put the word out around the continent to keep your eyes peeled for a girl with blonde hair and green eyes. And Ciri fits that description. So Ciri is taken prisoner. Back at Aretuza, Jaskier shows up hoping to find Ciri or anybody, but the only person he sees at first is Radovid, who he's surprised to see. Radovid fills Jaskier in as to what happened there and why Aretuza looks the way it does. The big news is the fact that the Second War has begun. Even though he's mad at him, Jaskier jumps into action. He realizes that Radovid needs to get out of there. He's in danger. He knows of an old trapper's route that he can send him through. He writes down a couple of directions, a couple of names to ask for, and he says to Radovid, this will get you back to the capital. Radovid tells Jaskier that he should probably come with him, but Jaskier says no. You don't understand. The war outside, it doesn't compare to what Geralt will unleash on the continent to find Ciri. Radovid offers to go with Jaskier and help and prove to him that he actually does care about him and he could be valuable. And Jaskier thinks about it and says, maybe, after I find Ciri. Radovid, however, doesn't think that Ciri's alive because he saw the tower explode, and he does warn Jaskier about this. Jaskier doesn't say a word, he just heads out. And then he runs into Yennefer. She tells him that Geralt has been taken to Brooklyn to heal up. So that's where Jaskier heads. The Dryads have been keeping Geralt safe while trying to heal him up. Takes a little bit of convincing when Jaskier shows up, but they eventually allow Jaskier to see his friend. Jaskier tells Geralt that Yennefer is fine. As for Ciri, he has bad news. On his way to Brooklyn, he got word that Ciri has been found by Nilfgaard. After what happens at Aretuza, everybody that was battling there kind of goes their separate ways. They need to regroup, but they're also all still searching for Ciri. And word has gotten out that Ciri is headed to Nilfgaard. The White Flame has her. One of the people that's most upset is King Vizimir. It's not like Vizimir really cares about getting Ciri, but what he does care about is the optics. He sent Dijkstra and Philippa to do a job, and they just didn't. He was supposed to purge the Brotherhoods, but there are no brothers left. Aretuza's in rocks, and he hasn't heard from Radovid yet, so he feels like he's dead. He wants to make an example of somebody, and that somebody is going to be Philippa, and he wants Dijkstra to do it. Radovid, however, comes back later that night. King Vizimir is thrilled to see him. He's very relieved. He wants to get him settled and get a bath, but Radovid says, I'm not staying. I've found someone that needs me, and right now he needs my help, so I'm leaving. King Vizimir reluctantly agrees, and Radovid goes off to get ready to leave. But not too far down the hall, you've got Dijkstra, drunk, pacing back and forth about what the king has ordered him. He can't bring himself to do it. He goes to Philippa's room, and he explains that in the end, even though they think Vizimir is an idiot, he is their king and they failed him, and sacrifices need to be made because of it. But he points the blade at him, and he tells Philippa, do it. Do it, and tell Vizimir that it was all my fault. But Philippa doesn't do it. She puts the knife away and tells Dijkstra, I knew I could trust you with my life, but I could never trust you with my plan. And that plan was to eliminate Vizimir. She has that girl that she hooked up with in the castle cut Vizimir's throat. They then usher in the King Radovid era. So for the moment, Radovid is not going anywhere. And right under Radovid's nose, in his own kingdom, Yennefer, Tissaia, and a couple of the other mages. Because they're frantically looking for Ciri. They're trying to figure out where Vilgefortz hid her, and they go to that Redanian castle, the one that Vilgefortz was using as an experiment room. They don't find Ciri, but they do find the remnants of his experiments. By looking at the experiments, though, they realize just who they're dealing with and how powerful Vilgefortz truly is. Upon leaving the castle, Tissaia especially feels like an idiot. Ever since she realized she was betrayed by Vilgefortz, she's felt really bad, but it seems like lately she's just been constantly reminded about how dumb the move was, about how she shouldn't have trusted him the entire time. They're all about to go their separate ways. For some, back to Aretuza, for others, back looking for Ciri. But Marigold stops everyone and says, we can't leave these girls. We have to give them a proper burial. Initially, there's a little bit of pushback, but Yennefer says, no, Marigold's right. We have to do right by these girls. So they walk back in the castle, and they get ready to do a ceremonial burial for them. Right before she joins the other girls, Yennefer goes to check on Tissaia, because she knows that she's not right now. Tissaia is really beating herself up about all the lives that were lost. Yennefer, being a good friend, tells her none of it would have mattered. The war was inevitable, and deep down, Tissaia is a good person because she didn't hand Ciri over. Yennefer is forced to give Tissaia a little bit of a pep talk, remind Tissaia who the hell she is, and how valuable she is, and how much they need her. It is appreciated. Tissaia gives her a hug, but in the end, it doesn't work. When Yennefer goes down and joins Marigold and a few of the other mages for the ceremonial burial, Tissaia pens Yennefer a goodbye note and then kills herself. Yennefer realizes it's happening when flowers fall from the sky and she puts two and two together. The note is really heartfelt, and she refers to Yennefer as her daughter. It's pretty clear that there was a love between the two. After the dust kind of settles and she collects herself, Yennefer knows that in order to get Ciri back, she's going to need Geralt's help. She heads to Brooklyn, where Geralt is still on the mend. Ethne has put one of her most trusted soldiers, named Milva, in charge of kind of healing Geralt back. Milva doesn't really want to do it, but she is following orders. Ethne reminds Milva that at one point she was Geralt. Milva's issue is Geralt isn't listening. He's not healthy enough, and he's trying to leave early. Because Geralt knows the severity of the situation. He knows that every moment that he isn't searching for Ciri, she's in danger. But the fact is, Geralt isn't healthy. The healing waters that they've been using, the tactics, it's not working. Geralt will try to get up and train for a little bit, and Milva has to bring him back down to earth and say, dude, you're useless right now. Neither you or this bard are any good to that girl dead, and right now, with the way you're carrying yourself, you would get killed pretty quickly. What you need is rest. You need to recuperate. So when Yennefer finally reaches Geralt, he's still that way. He still wants to get up, but he's still not healthy enough to do so. The first thing Yennefer does is apologize because she doesn't have Ciri with her. And Geralt apologizes for allowing Vilgefortz to get the best of him. Yennefer then tells Geralt about Tissaia passing away. Yennefer's really concerned because she doesn't know who's going to lead them. And Geralt says, you are. He then tells Yen, I need you to heal me. The Dryads, they did what they could, but I need to be healthy so I can make Amir pay and I can make Vilgefortz pay and I can get our girl back. Kind of emotional for Yennefer because she feels like if she does this and she sends him on his way, it'll be the last time she sees him. So she says, promise me that this won't be the last time because I need you. And Geralt says, I need you too, Yen. Yennefer then starts using her magic to heal Geralt, and it works. In the morning, Yennefer heads back to go meet with Marigold and a couple of the other mages and rally the troops a little bit. The Brotherhood might be gone, but in its place seems to be the Sisterhood, led by Yennefer. And she tells all of them that they need to eliminate Vilgefortz. And Vilgefortz has gone off to stand side by side with the White Flame. But so has Frangilla and Francesca. Now, their motives are a little bit different, but they do approach the White Flame with an offer. They tell him that while it looks like he's won, there's still work to be done. They need to secure Temeria's most critical supply chain. If they lose that, they're going to lose this entire war. What he needs is someone who knows Sintra inside and out. Actually, what he needs is two people that know Sintra inside and out. She's talking about herself and Francesca. This will be a win-win because Frangilla will serve the White Flame while also giving Francesca's people safe haven. The White Flame accepts the offer, but Francesca makes a critical mistake. She mentions how the Scoia'tael deserves peace, and he says, oh, no, I need them. You can lead the elves into Sintra. I mean, the old ones, the sick ones, the ones who can't fight. But the Scoia'tael, they're going to have to stay with us. This really pisses Francesca off, who tells the White Flame, they're not going to do that, not as long as they serve me. And he shoots back, then disavow them. Either they die fighting for us so the rest of your people may live, or all your people die. While initially Francesca was pissed off, the more she had time to think about it, the more she thought that the White Flame was right. The entire proposal from Frangilla was all a plan to grab Ciri, hand her over to Francesca, and now she's got her. But when Frangilla meets up with Francesca later in the day and explains how this plan will be great for them and it'll work out, Francesca cuts her off and says, no, sacrificed too much already. I'm going to accept the White Flame's offer. Frangilla is shocked by this, but she also doesn't want to serve the White Flame. She wants out. She tries to remind Francesca that Ciri can give her Dol Plathana, but Francesca says, no, it's not out there. It used to be, but we lost it. Home is where my people are safe, and they'll be safe in Sintra. My people certainly won't be safe in an unknown sphere with a girl with unknown powers. Especially when I know that we're going to be under Nilfgaard's protection. They continue to go back and forth on this, arguing until finally Frangilla reveals that it was actually the White Flame who had Francesca's baby killed. At this revelation, Francesca is very hurt. But it's hard to see who she's more mad at. The White Flame for doing it, or Frangilla for knowing about it and just now revealing it. Frangilla tries to deflect, putting all the blame on the White Flame, but Francesca just looks at her and says, Amir does not know the meaning of suffering, but he will, and so will you. They then seem to head off to bed because the next day is going to be when Ciri finally arrives back in Nilfgaard. That means Geralt doesn't have a lot of time. After Yennefer did her spell, Geralt felt a lot better. It seemed to work. He started training a little bit more, and he feels like he's ready to leave. When he does, Jasker's going to be right by his side. In his downtime, he writes songs. And at one point, he's trying to write a song when Dara shows up. Jasker recognizes Dara, but it takes Dara reminding him what he did for him to really jog the memory. Something's been really eating at Dara this entire time. When he found his own people, he felt like he found a family. But he couldn't get over the fact that they agreed to fight for the White Flame. He couldn't do it, so he ran. Geralt then walks up and interrupts the conversation, and Dara then turns his attention to Geralt and says, I knew Ciri. She was the first person I really felt safe with. If you see her again, tell her I forgive her, and that I'm truly sorry. Seeing her again is certainly the plan. Despite Milva telling him that he's not ready, the next day, Geralt and Jasker leave. Upon trying to get to Nilfgaard, they do reach a checkpoint. It's the Nilfgaardian army. Now, Geralt and Jasker, they're able to get through, but the soldiers in the army, they're dicks. And when Geralt sees them messing with an innocent family, he can't just let it lie. He goes back and he shows that maybe he is back to 100% because he kills all of them. Well, all but the final one. He gets a little help because Milva didn't think he was ready, and Milva was following him to kind of be that extra set of eyes and a bit of protection. Geralt, Jaskier, and Milva then head off to Nilfgaard to get Ciri back, while Yennefer is doing her best to make sure that when Geralt does reclaim her, she has a safe world to return to. Might be too late, though. That day is the day where they're having the ceremony to welcome Ciri back into Nilfgaard. The White Flame is there. Vilgefortz is by his side. But when Ciri walks through the castle and gets to Emir, it's not Ciri. It's Taryn. She still looks just like Ciri, and she has the entire Kingdom of Nilfgaard fooled. So, where's Ciri? Well, her captors never turned her in. She's a prisoner. She's chained up in a bar with another kid who's a prisoner. They're able, though, to create a distraction with their captors by causing a little bit of infighting that distracts them enough so they're able to free themselves. The other prisoner also gets help from his buddies. They show up just in the nick of time. So you've got Ciri, this other prisoner, and his friends taking out all of the captors. And to everyone's surprise, Ciri is more than holding her own. But they leave Ciri's captor for her. They hand him a sword and they say, let's make this a fair fight. And Ciri plays cat and mouse with this guy. He's no match for her. But eventually, she does have to do what she was warned about, and that is plunge a sword right into a guy's chest and kill him. She had avoided this moment pretty much her entire life, and when it finally happens, it kind of shakes her a little bit. She's silent. The rest of the group, with everybody dead, they start rifling through pockets, grabbing whatever they can. And what seems to be the leader walks up to her and says, yeah, they say it feels bad taking a life, but it doesn't. Missile then asks Ciri, what's your name? And instead of giving her real name, Ciri says, you can call me Falca. And it certainly seems like Ciri is headed off with this group. And that is the end of Season 3 of The Witcher. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. Be nice in the comments section. If I messed a name up, you don't have to point it out. It's okay. You can just let it go. I do have merch. I have t-shirts and hats and stuff. Go buy something. I have a Patreon. Go subscribe. I'll see you back here for Season 4.